I'd like to welcome them back to the stage, Alan and Stephanie Kelsey. Give it up.
Thank you. Yep.
Thanks, man.
Good morning.
Morning, everybody. I brought the wiser half with me today.
Thank you.
Glad to have you, sweet.
The sun is shining.
Yes, that's always good.
It's a good thing. Well, I feel like Spencha is like the perfect example of living out your strengths and what that looks like the ultimate, as you were talking yesterday, the pinnacle. And to see like the light that comes from her as she operates out of the gifts and the talents that God has given her. And you were left last night with kind of imploring of you to be a talent scout, right, for your spouse. And I thought that Spencha is such a good example of imagine the talent that is obvious in her voice. Imagine that talent living within your spouse. And it may not be a voice like angels singing, but it could be a talent of the same proportion that God's put in you to express on this earth. And imagine being misunderstood. Or imagine somebody telling Spencer, don't use that gift.
Yeah, you should be a golfer.
Yes. Can you imagine? And we accidentally do that to each other all the time. We accidentally, because we don't know and understand each other, we kind of fall in love with these really amazing eyes. We say there's rose-colored glasses on when you meet, and then you get into marriage, so you kind of find out like that very thing that you loved kind of annoys you a lot in marriage. So today we're going to just explore so much more of how to steward each other, your hearts, the gifts, the talents, the things that God has put in you on purpose. We want to help you see each other in the way that God sees each of you and help you to be the greatest champion for one another today.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
It is. So we're starting with session 3 this morning. We had session 1 last night and then a short break and then session 2. So we're going to pick up with session 3 today. So I'm wondering if the guy who's running the slides can move it back to session 3. Anyway, while he's doing that, I want to talk just a little bit about a phrase that I heard this guy had written, that if it was possible, he would love to get to the end of his life with a glass of champagne in one hand and a Snickers bar in the other hand, yelling, "Woohoo! What a ride!" And if you could get to the end of your life saying that, then I think that you will have done some things prior to that moment to make that possible. And I don't think you could have that sort of enthusiasm or have that kind of joy in your life if you weren't operating in the gift set that God has given you and enabled you to be incredibly successful with. And so I'm glad that you guys are back. And I'm this morning, the plan is, let me put this down, it's driving me nuts. You know how, if you just survey your life real fast, I think you could find that at any moment, all of us are simultaneously moving away from some stuff, and there's a handful of things that we feel like we're moving toward. Right? Simultaneously, you could say, well, right now, I want to move away from the 5 pounds I picked up over the summer. Got to get that behind me. But I have this other thing that I want to learn about, or I want to master, or I'm interested in, or I want to become, and I'm moving toward that. At any time in our lives, those two things are simultaneously happening with us. And so that's kind of how we thought about taking the journey through this conference together, is that we'd introduce an idea, introduce a concept, and then there'd be some language around, well, let's put a little bit of distance between us and that kind of behavior. Because obviously that's not strengths-oriented, that's not helpful, but there is a bunch of things that could be really helpful for us. And so we're going to finish the moving away from ideas this morning and then spend the rest of our time moving toward the ways that we get strengthened.
Yeah, I wanted to say, as Alan started on this journey of strengths, it was used very popular in a corporate setting, and Alan could see just the value even in the church that we were a part of, because we were in leadership at that time at a church in Houston. And the more and more that he worked with strengths, and we would talk about strengths, we could see what a healing tool strengths was. The amount of times that Alan would sit in front of another person and start talking about what their 5 strengths were or are, and the tears would start coming. You mean it's okay that I'm made this way? It's okay that I see through this filter? Because my whole life I had, my mom trying to tell me I needed to be more like my older sister, or my grandma saying, if you're going to make it in life, you need to do this, that, or the other. And it doesn't always resonate or fit with the way that God made us. And so well-meaning, loving people try to fit us in a mold that makes sense to them, but it doesn't necessarily resonate or make sense to you. And so in this process of Alan kind of working with people time after time, the other thing that was fascinating to us is in a corporate setting, business people were learning about this tool for work, but not even taking a moment to think, you should take that tool home to your marriage. Like, just as helpful as it can be in a church setting or in a corporate setting, it could also help with every single relationship in your life. And so we kind of stumbled upon that, which we'll share more stories along the way and how we stumbled upon that. But one of the things that became very evident in moving away from pain was understanding minimization and projection. So these are 2 things that we do often when we're operating in our strength, and even when we understand our strength, how we project it on others, or we minimize others or ourselves. Do you want to say anything about that before I give an example?
No, you go right ahead.
Okay. So minimization was something that I was very comfortable with towards myself, because my strengths very much lend towards relational interactions, people. I'm a people person. So as I'm living out my life and my strengths, people around me can really appreciate my connection with each other, with them, the way that I handle interactions, the way that I correct even. Those things come pretty easy and natural for me. But when it came to a job application, what I perceive the world wants, I didn't know how to put that on paper. Even though I have these amazing gifts and talents that I'm operating out of every single day, and people see that and they value that in me, when it came to Alan and I was at home for about 18 years raising our 2 girls. And towards the end of that 18 years, we had talked about me going back to work. And well, when you're 18 years out of the workforce, like, what am I supposed to put on a resume? Like, I have 2 amazing girls? Hire me? So even having language or words to put to paper, I just felt like the world would disqualify me right away. And so this is where you see that minimization. I am minimizing what I have to bring to this world. For one, I don't have language to put around it, so I don't know how to tell you how great I am at certain things. And also my perception of what the world is wanting, which I feel like is all of my husband's gifts. You know, he has like the brainiac. He loves living in his head. He has intellection. He likes to learn things and teach people things. And I'm not wired like that. That's not the way I think. If I'm going to learn something, I want to learn something about relationship. because I'm so heavily wired towards relationship, which makes me so good at managing people. I had never thought of that being a skill I could put on a resume, how great I would be at managing people. And so that minimization for myself even, where I can cower or feel lowly or feel less than because my strengths don't look like maybe what I perceive the world to say, this is what an amazing person looks like. Does that make sense? I hope you have some stories popping up in your mind, either where you might minimize somebody else or you might minimize yourself in the strengths that God has given you, because I know that God wants to rewrite that in your life. He wants to rewrite that perception that you have of yourself in that way, and he also wants to rewrite how you may perceive the person sitting next to you, or your children, or maybe somebody that you work with, where there might be an annoyance or just a lack of understanding, but God wants you to see them through a different light. Does that sound good? As we go through this morning, something I want to encourage you to do is, as we're sharing stories, if there's something that resonates your own story, if God brings something to the surface, I want you to write it down. Because by the end of our time together today, you may have a number of those things, and you may think, I'm not going to forget that thing, and I want to talk to my spouse about it later, but you might. So write that thing down. And what will be fun is, as you start to discover some things that God's bringing to the surface, that's a great date night. Because one thing your spouse wants more than anything is to know you and to know your heart. You going to add anything?
Well, the short version is we all tend to minimize ourselves and people around us. Knock it off.
Yes, to the point.
Don't do it.
Okay, so projection is the other part of that. Projection is where I know I'm amazing at this, and I'm going to project on all of you that you're fools if you don't know how to do what I do. So when you're projecting on your spouse or on your child or on at work, you are prickly. You're not very fun for everyone else around you when you see your amazingness and you think everyone else should have the same amazingness that you have. And so there's this tendency to, this comes supernatural for me, and we're such a good example of this because the things that come really natural for Alan don't come natural for me, and vice versa. So this is one of the moments I want to just really praise my husband, because the more I learn about how different we are, I'm so thankful. I think I would be one of those wives that feel like this small if it wasn't for the fact that my husband sees those things as a gift in me, instead of him seeing how different I am and berating me for that. And that can happen easily just because, again, I don't think our heart is on purpose to berate our spouse. I think that we don't understand our spouse. And if we think, if they only saw things the way I saw things, the right way,
Well,
then it would be okay, right?
of course it would for you.
Exactly. So just in even giving each other room and not projecting on one another. And I've done this, so can I say as a Christian wife, and I'll apologize again to you, honey. I'm very sorry.
My favorite part.
Other parts are coming later.
Oh,
but this
yeah,
is your
that's
favorite
right.
part. So because of how relational I am, I'm very relational with the Lord. You can see even how your strengths play out in how your personal relationship with the Lord plays out. right? We throw these Christian words around so easily. Your personal relationship with the Lord. So if it's a personal relationship with the Lord, why do we as Christians try to project onto others the way they need to spend time with the Lord? If you're a good Christian, you're going to do it like this. Here's my 5 points for a quiet time for you to be a good Christian. And so, because my husband and how he's wired, achiever is his top strength.
Mm-hmm.
He likes to do things. He likes to be active. He likes to be moving. So one of his favorite places to spend time with the Lord is in the garage. Well, that does
Wait,
not...
what was that? Did I hear angels singing?
Yes,
I heard it.
angels are singing. So and I think, there's probably maybe more men than women like this, in that I love eyeball to eyeball. You sit across the table from me, like 3-hour lunches with my girlfriends are my favorite. Because we are like going deep and our hearts are connected. Oh, the guys are already like, oh, kill me right now. So a lot of times guys like shoulder to shoulder. In other words, let's go golfing with my buddy and that's how I'm connecting. Or let's do something together, but don't make me like stare at you. That could be very uncomfortable. And so for me, as this good Christian wife wanting to help my husband be a good Christian husband, I project onto him, this is what it looks like. I wish you were spending more time with the Lord. I wish you were doing it like this, because that makes me feel secure, because that's how I spend time with the Lord. So I'm going to project on you over and over that you're failing, you're not doing it right, you're not hearing from the Lord, you're not connecting with the Lord, because I know how to connect with the Lord. And I do it like this. And if you're not doing it like this, what is wrong with you? Can you see how easy it is to do that? How easy it is for us to take our strengths, and if my strengths as being a relational person fits well with that pastor that's standing up here saying A, B, C, and D, this is how you spend time with the Lord, then I can also look at my husband during church and be like,
See, told ya.
I hope you're listening there. And how much freedom is there when I step back and say, this is how I spend time with the Lord. How do you spend time with the Lord? And then I get to hear about how he hears the Lord's voice when he's using his hands. When he's laying under the car in the garage and God spoke to him and told him this about his children, or about this work issue that's going on at work, but he's out there by himself with the Lord and the Lord's speaking to him. How cool is that? Is that not freeing? Our daughter, our second, her name is Logan, she's this very free-spirited girl. And again, as this good Christian mama, I'm trying to teach my child how to spend time with the Lord, and that's what I want more than anything, for them to have their own relationship with the Lord. Not mine, not their dad's. I want them to have a relationship. And so as I'm learning about these things, as we're growing in strengths and understanding more and more, this girl, I would tell her teachers in elementary school, if you see her moving around a lot, will you send her on an errand to the office and back? And she just was moving in her seat all the time, so I was so concerned about her going into school and sitting still. And so I felt like the Lord just gave me this sweet idea of taking her and her Bible out to the track at a school. And they had those pole vault mats, those big cushy mats out there. And so we went on a beautiful day, and we just laid on the mat outside, and she got to just talk to the Lord, read some scripture, walk around the track, and just be with the Lord in a way that wasn't so still. So those memories are the sweetest memories of pouring in, seeing the person that's in front of you instead of your version of what needs to happen. So part of the beauty of strengths is when you get a clearer view on what God has deposited in that person. And how can I be the talent scout to draw that out? How can I be the talent scout to Logan, sweet little Logie? How can I be the talent scout to her to draw out how God's made her to have personal connection with the Lord instead of the way He has made me? And how can I be that talent scout instead of condemning my husband who's spending time with the Lord, but he's not doing it the way that makes sense to me? How much greater is it if I can encourage him in spending time with the Lord in the way that he hears the best, the most clear, the most connected and in tune? So those are some really practical examples in how easy it is to project on other people.
It comes really easily because it feels so natural to you, right? You've had these strengths from the day you were born, and so to think this way feels like completely normal. And there's really good intention behind it, if you'll follow the logic with me for a second. So I feel this way because it feels so normal to me, like I've felt this way my whole life. And other people tell me that I'm normal, so I have a reasonable confidence that the way I think is pretty normal. But then when I see you do your thing your way, I'm like, that is not normal. It's not normal, but I love her, and I want her to be treated nice like I am. So I'm going to go over and show her how to do life the way I know to do it, because then people will treat her normal like they treat me normal. Right? So there's actually this well-meaning idea behind it all. It's horribly condescending, but it's very well-meaning. And so I go over and I start trying to tell her, no, sweetie, you don't do quiet times like that. Let me help you. You see? And so I'm helping you now. And meanwhile, the person's over there feeling like, you just handed me Saul's armor. It doesn't fit. Like, I don't know how to do this with your stuff. Could I do it my way? So the whole idea of projecting the way you see life onto somebody else is basically asking of them to be as effective at the thing as you are when they don't even have your strengths. It's really hard to do. It's kind of not fair. Knock that one off too. Don't do that. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about when we're thinking about things you want to move away from in your marriage, things you want to move away from, don't project on each other, don't minimize each other, don't minimize yourself, is this idea that we discovered when we were doing research for the book. There's another couple, Hunt and Hendricks, that wrote a book called Getting the Love You Want. They're both PhD psychologists, and I think they met working at SMU. And this is Helen Hunt from the very famous Dallas Hunt family, Dallas and Fort Worth area. Anyway, she said to Mr. Hendricks, why should I marry you? You just got divorced. You're like the marriage guy at SMU, like you study marriage and family. Why should I marry you? He goes, that's a very good question, actually. I'll tell you what, why don't we do some research and see if we can figure out if this has any shot of working. So they spent 8 years before they got married, spent 8 years researching for this book. And here's I'll give you the Cliff Notes, short version of the answer, getting the love you want. If you are left to your own devices to choose the spouse of your choosing, it seems like history shows that you are most likely to choose the one who is most able to heal you. You will, left to your own devices, select the person who is most likely to heal you. And what that means is, where I'm broken, she's whole. Where I have lack, she has plenty. And it provides the balance and the filling up of the gaps that are in my life. So they discovered this and they write it out in their book, and it's very fascinating because I get better when I'm around her. That's the healing that we're talking about. And it's all very warm and squishy in the book. And then in marriage terms, it's like, would you stop picking on me about that? Right? That's how it plays out. It becomes that thing. And so we started looking at that from a strengths perspective and then wondering how couples are paired. Turns out, more often than not, you pick the person whose strengths are not like yours at all. Like, my top 8 or 9 strengths are almost all in the bottom of her list. And all of the stuff that she's fantastic at is at the bottom of my list. And so the things that I think are riveting and so fascinating to me, I take to her, and it's about enough to put her into insomniac sleep. It's like, oh, I can't even bear it. It's not even interesting to me. So the whole idea of opposites attracting is just a very normal and sort of God-designed way that our lives end up interacting with each other. And you can look at that, and then 20 years into your marriage, file that in there, she makes me crazy box, right? Because she's so different, she just doesn't think like a normal person. Or you can just acknowledge that God made us differently, and that, just like magnetic attraction, the differentness of each other is really an asset in your marriage. You know, if you get married to someone who has the same DNA structure as you, your offspring are weaker. But if you get married to someone who's got a very different biological structure than you, your offspring are stronger. And so there's a value in you retaining your individuality and not becoming just lost in the other person. And it's true relationally, and it's true biologically. So just this whole idea that opposites attract is good. And the thing we want to move away from here is that your oppositeness is intended to make each other crazy. It's like God's evil plan going, they're not going to like it at 5 years, but wait till they get to 25. Oh, it's going to be terrible. He's not up there playing chess like that, thinking he's going to mess up everybody's lives. There's a balancing and a refining movement that God's involved with, and it provides strength for you, and it provides strength for me.
I have a good example for that.
Do you really?
Yeah.
You want to wait
He's
until
always
later?
afraid. He's always afraid. Okay, so when Alan and I got married, I'm from Nebraska, and Alan is from South Africa. We get married. I'm 20, he's 24. We moved to South Africa like within a week
Yeah.
of getting married, within a month. And so we moved to South Africa, and you know, it's been great. Like, our whole courtship, everything has been like, this man's amazing. And he's moving me to a country that I've never been to before, to meet his family, to be connected, to know like what life looked like for him growing up, which I loved. So we get our own place, and there's more room for us to be ourselves more and more and more, right? So we get our own place, and what we learn over time is I grow up in a family, the loudest person wins. So when an argument comes of any proportion, I will get louder. And if my point didn't come across the first time, it just means I need to get a little louder for you to hear what I'm saying. Not necessarily change what I'm saying, just say the same thing louder. Doesn't that make sense? My husband comes from a family, they have this beautiful rug in the middle of their living room where all the family gathers on a weekly basis. And the rug is this high because they don't talk about anything. They don't raise their voice. They just sweep everything under the rug. Let's just put it under there. So over the years, the rug piling that has happened, welcome Stephanie to the family, because I'm going to say, what's this? Let's talk about it. Relationship, right? Like, that's my thing. We don't hide things, we talk about things. So your family loves me, don't they, honey?
They love you so much because they learn so much about each other when you come around.
It's true. His mom can't wait till I come to visit in South Africa because she wants me to ask the things she's been wanting to know, but she won't ask her own sons. So, yes, we have learned to appreciate all of those things. But so I go back to, with that little bit of history, our first fight in our new home. I'm probably this far away from Alan, screaming at him because he's hard of hearing, obviously. And he is sitting on the edge of the bed looking at me, probably horrified. And he says, "I can hear you." Oh. Do you see how we're starting to heal each other already? It's not always very comfortable. And it actually annoys me when he won't engage and yell back at times. And of course, it annoys him when I'm screaming at him and he just wants to have a conversation. But he needed me to draw him out and to talk about the things going on inside of him. And I needed him to help me calm down. Like, it is okay to have a disagreement and a conversation and to talk about it like civilized human beings and not cave people.
All right, so there's...
That wasn't so bad.
No, it was really good. You're doing good. All these stories put me in a fantastic light. I love it. So we've talked about how opposites attract. We've talked about, yesterday we concluded with, your counterfeits and kind of looking at not reinforcing, not using language with each other that reinforces what the devil is trying to sell you about who you are. We talked about that yesterday, and then we talked about minimization and projection. And so then I thought today we might deal with some of our traditional roles. So am I poking the bear a little too much if we start talking about whose job it is to wash the dishes? Or whose job it is to do the taxes? Or whose job it is to pay the bills? How about whose job is it to nurture the kids? What if I had all of the empathetic, harmonious, intuitive feeling strengths that made it a flash in the pan for me to completely emotionally understand my kids? And my wife was a hard-driving attorney who had all of the math and the thinking skills that rendered her perspective on the children less informed than mine. What if that was the case? What if our roles, though, coming from a traditional, particularly Southern environment, said, no, it is the woman's job to play that role, and so you guys need to do the flip-flop thing. Well, then I find myself trying to be an attorney, completely unequipped or not equipped to do that thing. And she finds herself trying to nurture the kids, grasping for any little help she can find to try to understand how they feel and unable to make the connection. Should we fall to the roles that we've been handed by tradition or society? Or should we lean in to the abilities that come naturally to us? And I'm not trying to advocate for one or the other necessarily, just rather to say, at least have the conversation in your homes. At least have the conversation with your spouse to decide, what do we both do and which ones are better if you do them? You know, one of the ways that Steph and I came to that decision for our lives was there was a season of time as a self-employed individual where she kind of would do all the books and the accounting for our business and kind of pay the bills. And that was okay. It's just it wore her out and it took hours because she's great at math, but just the function on the computer and the working and everything was just wearing her out. And I would come home and go, oh, well, it's just easy. You just do the, step by step. You just put the thing and then you click that. See, that's what, and she'd be like, I was waiting. I've been messing around with that for 20 minutes. And it makes her mad, right? Because it seems so easy for me and it's so like not intuitive to her. Well, we switched that one role and it gave her 3 hours back and it takes me 20 minutes to do the work. So it's just a matter of aligning yourself and the things you do at home or with the kids with the abilities that God's given you. See, He's setting you up for success in life anyway. Why fight to hold on to an old box that tradition has handed you? Why not consider that God has enabled you to be fantastic in a particular line and sort of lean into that? You got some thoughts?
Yeah, I think, in this regard, there's a place of walking in humility and not in pride. That pride can really hold us into some of those traditions that make no sense, but we're just going to force that to happen anyway. I think that for us, we really have fallen in a lot of those traditional places, and the places that are maybe a little less traditional. I'm not a quiet little stay-at-home wife. I actually have really strong opinions that I'm not afraid to share. And I think for us, I feel like an ease that we got to in our marriage was Alan learning that even though I was a stay-at-home mom for so many years, if he would listen to me, it would make him so much better in his workplace even. Because the intuition that I have with relationships and how strong I am in relationships, and this is true whether I come to Alan and say, hey, I know you love our girls very much, but I'm telling you, you're missing their heart in this space. And he needs to swallow his pride. It's not about his intent at this point. It's about reaching their heart. That he would have to swallow his pride and trust me. I'm for you. I'm not against you. I know you love our girls, but you're so in your head all the time, and the things that are going on for work or whatever, you're missing their heart in this area. I need you to see it because they need you to see it as their daddy. So it's even within traditional roles, find out where you can lay yourself down more and listen to the other person. Because we're not better if he's the man and he's the head of the home and he's domineering everything. We're better when he's humble and he's listening to his wife and his children. Whether I am an attorney and working outside of the home or whether I'm an at-home mom. Because sometimes those traditional roles, even if they fit, even if they do work, that a wife has this role and a man has that role, and that's typically accepted traditionally. Even if they fit, we can have a tendency to make one role feel less than the other. And that's where our pride can get in the way and hurt you. That hurts you. You can be the man of the house. We're so used to in church hearing about women, submit to your husband. He's the head of the home, right? Well, we forget where we're supposed to submit to one another, because God says that as well. We forget where we're to be one isn't to be the same. It's to care so much for one another that you're more complete together. Together, not enmeshed or becoming the same person, but both of your contributions are fully coming to the table. So whether your roles fit traditionally or they don't, Alan is imploring of you, even if they don't fit at all and those roles are completely reversed, do what works best for you and your family. But even if those roles are more traditional, be careful to not walk over and step over each other, to see each other and see the contribution. There should be as a head of a home, there should be no decision you're making while you're squashing the other person. You should be in unity. If your wife is not at peace about moving forward, you should stop until you're both at peace moving forward. That's wisdom. So, sorry, little soapbox there.
Yeah, so what I would advocate for you is, if time would permit at some point, and the scribe among you has the inclination, write down what you think all the roles in the family are. Not down to every nuanced thing, but the 10 or 12 kind of bigger ones. Write them on single cards and put them all in the pile in the middle of the table. And the two of you can sit there and go, okay, well, take the ones that you feel like you really succeed at or that are very effective for you. And so maybe, one takes 4, the other one takes 5, and there's 3 in the middle. Nobody wants them. Nobody wants these roles, but somebody's got to do them because it's what makes for a healthy family, right? And then you can negotiate and talk it through. That way, who's doing what in the family has been pre-discussed. And then when I see you doing that thing later in life or that week, I was there when we made the decision that that's the best thing for you to be doing and not for me. And so I'm for you even when I'm not in that space. And so it just brings unity into the family. It's a great way to get aligned on your choices. So you can look at, you can look at his roles, you can look at her roles. I think you can look at things that you have to share together and then what each of your contribution is in that shared role space. And if you're wondering, I'm like, how do I even decide which ones I should keep? Then there's two pretty simple questions that I would encourage you to think. Do this little assessment to try to help you find it. Just answer the question, I'm great at, and then fill in the blank. When it comes to the stuff that's connected to you, your family, raising the kids, running the household, and in a marriage context. And then the other one is, the opposite, which is basically I stink at. Like, I hate this. I'm not good at it. It's not fun for me. I don't feel strong when I'm doing it. That's what drives me crazy.
Yeah, a really good practical example of this in our lives, because I was a stay-at-home mom, it was my job to cook dinner. I do not enjoy cooking dinner. I don't enjoy deciding what to cook for dinner. And so I'm not a horrible cook, but I kind of had my rotation of things. I'm not one that like goes in the kitchen, bam, bam, add this, add that. I'm going to have this new thing going. I'm like pot roast once a week, tacos, like I kind of had my rotation because I didn't have inspiration in the kitchen. Now, I wish I did, but I don't. I just do not enjoy it. I really just took that on as my role because I was at home and had the time to do that. And then as my kids got older, I purposed to teach them how to cook, and we would take turns. So now I was only having to cook 3-4 times a week, and my girls would help on the other days, so I would get a break.
Isn't that why you have kids, so you have free slaves
Yes,
for 18 years?
I'm just saying, if there's roles that don't fit the two of you, maybe think of what your kids could do. So, yeah, start teaching them, and that helps them be independent as well, which is awesome. So I taught them, and they started taking their turns in their teenage years and probably junior high, high school. And then I realized our girls are now married and out of the home. My little slaves are gone. What am I going to do? So you think of this idea Alan's giving you in seasons. Also, towards the end years, high school years for them, before they were out of the house, my season changed. For the last 5 years, I've been working full-time, and a few years before that, I was working part-time. So now we both work full-time. So I'm like, get out of jail free card. Why do I have to cook, right? So we had to reassess. We had to look again. And because we're both working, so financially, we get meals sent to our home 3 days a week. And so now I don't have to think of what to make. They're prepared ahead of time. They're healthy. We literally take them out of, first we tried the order the box where you prepare it in 30 minutes.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
No, takes longer than 30 minutes. And we still, neither one of us wanted to get home first and start cooking.
Is that what you were doing?
Even with, yes. I'd rather stay at the office
there I
and
am
work
thinking
later.
You're working so hard.
And let him get home first and start cooking.
This is wrong, man.
So
Jeez.
we're just learning. We're learning about each other. We're learning how these things work. And so now 3 days a week, we get the meals delivered. We don't even prepare them anymore. We put them in the microwave and we eat them. And it's great. So yeah, just keep looking at your roles. Don't be afraid to revisit in different seasons. And don't be afraid to let your kids help out too.
This reminds me of something. There's a woman that I enjoy listening to. She's Belgian, so she has a French accent, and she's Jewish. But her name is Esther Perel, and she's kind of a sex and family therapist. I think she's going to be like the new, what's the late Dear Jude or something person from? Yeah, Dear Abby.
Yeah.
And a reporter was interviewing her recently, and the reporter said to her, so you're like the marriage person or whatever. So, how long have you been married? Have you ever been divorced? Are you still married to your same husband or whatever? And kind of going down that road. And her answer was, well, I'm on my third marriage. And the reporter was like, aha, I got you. How can you be like the marriage person? You can't even keep your marriage together. You're on your third person and blah, blah, blah. So she just lets him run on for a little bit, And then when he's done, she said, well, I'm sorry, I think you're mistaken. You think that I have divorced my husband. I have been happily married to the same man for more than 30 years. But we are on our third marriage, meaning that life changes so much that he is a different man today than he was in the last season. And if I don't respond to him in a changed way that acknowledges this change in season and difference, then our marriage would have ended. And that's happened twice already, so this is now the third version of the same man that I'm married to from the very beginning. So she stayed married to the same guy this whole time, but what she's acknowledging is life hands you some very interesting changes, and who you are in that, like, we just had kids and now we're trying to raise them. I mean, do that for 10 or 15 years and that'll do something to you and your spouse, okay? Right? But then they get out of the house and then it's like, there's a whole new world out there. Like, I don't know. Like, what are we going to do, And so there's a whole new person that starts to show up because there's new opportunities. And so what I'm trying to acknowledge for you and I today is to stay open to the fact that we're going to have to be a little bit flexible with each other and make adjustments and accommodations as we both adapt to the changes in our environments. I mean, even going from toddlers and having them under your feet all the time to having them be gone and in school all the time is a huge, like, whoa, I got all this time back. What am I going to do with all that? And then when they move out of the house, it happens again. So there's just, and then it's like getting a raise because they're all gone, and you're not making any more money, but there's more money left in your account at the end of the month. It's awesome, until they move back in again. All right, we don't have time to talk about that. All right, so let's move on. So just think about this and think about them in the sense of your strengths. Where are you strong? What are you great at? Lean in there and do a little horse trading if you have to. Because just because your folks said it has to be this way does not mean that that's how it has to be. Fair enough? Okay. You're not mad at me, are you? Good, just checking.
How are we on time? Because our countdown isn't working.
I think we go to 10:30. Is that about right?
Is that right?
I'll let them put the countdown clock there.
Yes, 10:30, okay.
So the next idea we wanted to talk about was just the idea of this idea of just kind of being too domineering, like being too loud. Steph was mentioning being too loud a little bit earlier, and really doing it through your strengths. So, for example, there's the analytical side to me, the side that helps me kind of intuit things, understand things, work things out, and the strategic side of me can make it so that I understand things, mechanical things, very quickly. I'm probably a closet engineer, well, so something like that. But
He can fix anything.
And so, if she calls me and goes, honey, this thing is not working, or this is broken, or whatever, I could, it could be easy for me to just go, it's not that hard. I don't understand what's wrong with you. Like, just do and then I could give her instruction or whatever. And it just comes across as very domineering and very too much, And it just, for me, it just feels like I don't understand why you don't get this. This is really normal. And yet she's looking at me like, I don't even understand what kind of a tool you have in your hand. Never mind what name it has. So, and that's not to be diminishing of her, because if we flip-flop the the conversation, her capacity to slice nuances in relational conversation is so exacting. And for me, it's just like one big, I don't see the difference. Like, there's a thing in there? I never even knew that. It's crazy. So just the idea of being too loud, too kind of possessive, too domineering in a space can really intimidate a spouse. And it can be that what's driving that is your strength. You have a natural talent to be really good in this one particular place, and you have those endorphins going when that thing is kicking in, and so you just show up larger than you really need to, and it can feel a little intimidating to the other person, and so then you hide and either don't show up also in that space, or I acquiesce and I let her run that show completely. And so in our case, because she's like a relational superwoman, it would be easy for me to hide in our family and just let her raise the kids, and I'm just gone, right? The thing is, though, God gave our kids two parents, and they're not the same. One's a guy, one's a girl. I don't think there are any other options. So, and both are present in the family, and they're there for a reason to exact an influence that our children need from both of us. I can't just hand that off to her because she's got all the tools. Right? I've still got to be able to show up and be there. But I can't allow her to dominate that space so much that I don't feel like there's enough room there for me.
Yeah.
So just the idea of domineering, using your strengths, and that not going well. You got anything you want to say?
No, I think we've hit good on that. I think we need to move to our favorite next example.
Oh. Okay, moving on. Let's see what else is coming up there. All right, so the next one we want to talk about is just this idea that comes from Stephen Covey's material. And it is the idea of trying to understand before being understood. Just the statement, seek to understand before being understood. And the reason we want to talk about that is because it postures you and I in the perspective that allows the other person to be true, to be who they are, to show up the way God's invited them to, and given them the ability to. So there's parts of this that I love. It's a posture that I try to hold and to have, because for me, I'm driven by curiosity. There's so much about this person I want to understand, because I'm learning, and I'm an insatiable learner. I'm a very curious person. So my ability to seek to understand before being understood is driven by my learning, whereas Steph's would be probably driven by a need to really understand where the person's coming from, because there's a relational payoff there. And so the idea behind this seeking to understand before being understood, it's really about a posture of your heart. It's really about, listening is not the quiet you have before you speak. Listening is orienting to the other person and allowing your thoughts to be influenced by what they've just said before you respond. And I think sometimes with our strengths, it can really begin to interfere in that. So, is there a story you want to tell about this,
I think you
perhaps?
should go first, because I enjoy hearing your version first, and then I'll tell them the truth after you're done.
So I was running my own business, and I knew who my clients were. It was a Thursday, and I knew Jeff and Sandra were going to come for dinner on Friday night, the next day. So I'm coming home. It's Thursday evening. We're living in Houston. I'm working outside most of the time. I have to wear shorts and short sleeves because I'm basically perspiring all day. It's not pretty. And I'm pulling into the driveway, and I notice that the grass is not right for guests on Friday. But I also know who my clients are on Friday, and there's a good chance I'm going to be late, and I won't have time to be able to mow the grass before they get there for dinner, our guests get there for dinner, and I want our place to look nice. I know Steph would want it to look respectable. So I'm pulling into the driveway, and I'm thinking to myself, God, the only way I'm going to get this done, knowing where we're going, right? I'm very strategic, so I'm beginning with the end in mind. The end is tomorrow. It's the dinner, so I'm backing up from there, and I realize the right time to mow the grass is literally right now. I'm already sweaty. I'm already nasty, and it's just, it's the end of the day. I'm just going to punch this out, and then I'm going to be able to be inside with my family for the rest of the night. So I pull into the driveway, run into the garage, fire up the lawnmower, and I start literally almost running around because I got to get it done before the sun goes down. But because number one strength for me is achiever, and achievers aren't necessarily just starters. We're not people who get halfway through. We are finishers, okay? I am a box-checking fool. That's how I like to live. Like me and lists are the best friend. Like I got lists for my lists. And my best part of the day is to go, check, yes, baby, okay, I'm going to get another one. If I can get another one, it's an even better day for me, okay? That's how I roll. So the idea that I've got to now mow the grass, this is just a very normal thing, but I got to get it done before the sun goes down. Well, I didn't time it right. We had a bit of property at the time, and my little lawnmower was like, so I got to go real fast, and the sun goes down, so now I'm mowing by moonlight. I know this probably never happened to any of you, but I'm just saying like it happened to me. And there's no possibility in my world where the lawnmower gets stopped with half the yard mowed over there, and another half has not been done yet, and we just wait until the sun comes up the next day so I can see what I'm doing. There's no room for that. There's no space for that in my brain. I don't have a way to understand how to do that. I'm mowing now. We're going to get done. I don't care what time it is.
With a flashlight.
So I'm out there with a flashlight, right? I'm going to finish this thing tonight because that's what I said I'm going to do. I'm a finisher. Well, I get inside, and Attila the Hun comes to meet me. And she's like frothing at the mouth and just got crazy eyeballs. And I'm like, what is happening in my heart? I have love and adoration for you. I'm thinking, sweetheart, I'm doing this for us. We're going to have a great looking house tomorrow. When our guests come over, it's going to look fantastic. We're going to feel so good. And this is what I'm getting. Like, do you know what kind of a day I've had? This is ridiculous. So I'm ready to go, right? Do you want to take a shot?
Okay, so now I want you to forget everything you just heard. Wipe your mind clean, and I'm going to take you on a very different journey. I am sacrificing my life, raising our children, 2 small kids, no adults to talk to, all day long. I mean, how many diapers can a person change? And I cannot wait for my husband to get home. I don't love cooking, but because I know my husband works so hard, I'm going to have a hot meal ready for when my husband gets home.
You're laying it on a little thick right now.
This is my turn. So the meal is finished, and my husband's running late, but I'm so understanding. It is our own business. He works super hard. He can't always stop just in the middle of something. He's got to finish it out. And so I have the meal ready in the warmer, in the oven, waiting to see my husband so I can have an adult conversation. And I'm looking forward to seeing my husband. And so he texts me and lets me know he's on the way home. So I know where he's working that day, and I know how long it will take him to get home. And so I'm getting the table set and everything ready for my husband, my knight in shining armor, to walk through the door. And I hear him pull up the driveway. I hear the garage door open. I have the food out of the oven, on the counter. And then I hear the lawnmower going. I was furious. I couldn't wait to see him. I got all the timing down so I could love him, so I could serve him, so I could connect with him. My greatest need is a relational connection. And I'm starving for it because I'm at home all day. And then I'm seeing him in the dark, running around with the lawnmower. And my heart is frustrated. I feel unseen. I feel not respected of what I'm doing, what my role is, and you don't even have the decency to come in and say hello to me. You just get home and start working some more. And so I'm angry for myself and my family that my husband's still working into the night like this. So he comes in. Yes, I wasn't very nice. And I said to him, I wish I was grass. At least I would get cut once a week, is the first thing I said to him when he walked in the door.
Famous line.
So this was kind of a lot of the beginning of us figuring out and seeing each other through a strengths perspective, to where we were offending or hurting each other. I mean, who wants a wife like that? Who wants to walk in after working all day to that? And who wants a husband that's not going to be considerate and who won't at least say hello or tell me his thoughts and let me know what he's doing instead of just doing it and I'm supposed to be a mind reader? Like, who wants those things? But yet, when you hear his version first, and then you hear my version, can't you see where the hurt and the misunderstanding comes in? Doesn't it make sense that we would miss it? We both are loving each other. We both are doing things for the other. We both are doing what we know to serve each other. And yet, I'm ready to throw the frying pan in his face. How does that happen? One of the things that Brene Brown has helped us with is she has this thing where she says, the story I'm telling myself is. And so as a married couple, you know, if we had learned at that time to slow down and to say, the story I'm telling myself is, you don't care that I've taken the time to cook this meal. You don't care that I'm home all day taking care of our family and waiting for connection with you. You don't care or respect the things that I'm doing. And then he has the opportunity to say, the story I'm telling myself is, I love you and my family. I'm trying to make everything beautiful and great. I'm trying to think ahead for what we have coming the next day. And then we can see how different our stories are. And we can better understand. And then the negotiations come, right? Because it's not just the understanding that's needed. There still needs to be some tweaks. There still needs to be some give and take in the relationship. It's not okay that now I know he's an achiever and he likes to check things off his box so he doesn't have to listen to my thoughts or feelings, that he doesn't have to be present for his family. That's not okay. It helps me understand where he's coming from. And it's not okay that I'm working myself up to a tizzy that I'm literally thinking of killing my husband instead of feeding him the dinner that I cooked for him. Like, that's not okay. So learning to figure out how to tell the story that you're interpreting and be able to communicate that in a way of knowing, I know my story is not going to match his story. If I go and tell my girlfriends the story through my lens only and they don't get to hear his, that's where there's a big danger, right? Oh, I can't believe he's so inconsiderate. And they're going to agree with me because they're only hearing my version of the story. And he goes to his buddies and talks about, what do you call me, Tilda the tyrant or whatever? He goes and tells his buddies that. They're going to agree with him, right? That's not very healthy for a marriage. That's not very helpful to get your team on your side. That's divisive. And so we got to learn to work those things out together.
Yeah, so the strengths application is this. She's highly relationally oriented. And what I would have done better in that moment is to understand that her first need is relationship. The way she sees the world is through a relational quality. And if her first need is relationship, then my first job when I get home is to go inside, make that relational connection, and explain what I'm thinking and let her know what I'm trying to pull off, and then run back outside and go finish doing it. And her perspective then for me is to understand my strategic nature and my desire and my ability to get things done, and to filter that behavior in that way. So you use each other's strengths to inform you about the motive of the person who's in front of you and the work that they're doing. Yeah.
We should give them a break.
We should. I see everybody doing the pretzel thing with their
Oh,
legs.
yeah,
It's like
bathroom break.
that coffee is just doing what it needs to do. Come on, Matt. Come and give us instruction about what's going to happen next.